G'day Warbanders and welcome back to another video. This time we're looking at my top 5 historical strategy games of all time. Now this is all time, so it's not 2025 or 2026. This is like the games that I regularly return to, where I have about 100 hours in each probably. And yeah, we'll get straight into it. So the first one, and it's a toss-up, and that is Crusader Kings. And I would say Crusader Kings 3 specifically. Now, I was really toying up whether to choose Crusader Kings 3 or Crusader Kings 2. And while I have critiqued Crusader Kings 3 heavily on this channel, it does have a lot of content to offer, more so than Crusader Kings 2. It has religions, like customizable religions, like you can make your own culture. They've added China, they've added different mechanics like legitimacy, even though it's a bit too easy. You know, it's a great game in terms of modeling feudal relationships. Like it's one of the few games that models feudal relationships in any sort of capacity. There are some little games that I know of that do it, like Star Dynasties, but Crusader Kings is the ultimate game about this. And yeah, Crusader Kings is an RPG strategy game. And people would hesitate to call this a strategy game, but it is a strategy game, right? You're managing your dynasty, and it's all about dynastic struggle and Sims 4 gameplay. So a lot of people compare this game to Sims 4, and to be honest guys, I'm a huge fan of The Sims. On PlayStation, I played Sims 2. I'm probably a girl, but I love Sims 4. Okay, and this is a great game for, dolls. Okay, this is dolls for men and also women, but yeah, this is a game for dolls because yeah, the game's way too easy, and I've sort of come to the realization that you got to roleplay heavily in this game, otherwise it's too easy to play. That's the only downside of this game, is that if you want to have a good time, you have to roleplay each character on what they would do. And I know people are going to say in the comments, oh well, it should be a better game. And yes, you're right, it should be a better game, but it's still, the roleplay is pretty nice. And it's still one of those games that I keep coming back to. I have like 400 hours in Crusader Kings 3. I have like 200 hours in Crusader Kings 2. And yeah, this is a game where I also enjoy the civil wars. It sometimes turns into relatives versus relatives, because I like to give my lands to my family, because that's what historically was done, right? Keeping the family, right? And then I get these situations, these role-play moments where I have my own Wars of the Roses, where my family are put together in these wars, fighting each other and actually killing each other in combat. So it's just a very enjoyable experience, historical experience, even though some of the elements of Crusader Kings 3 can be critiqued heavily, which I've done on this channel multiple times. You can customize your experience with the endless mods, okay? Paradox Games, they're heavily saved by their mods. Like the modders are the most dedicated in this space. They create mods to just overhaul the game entirely. You can play Game of Thrones, Elder Scrolls. That's why I recommend Crusader Kings 3, because the platform for modding is huge. And also, if you're like me, you might want to dip into the Coon mods as well. So if you like Coon mods, hop over to Lovers Lab and they'll sort you out. But yeah, our next game, Grand Tactician Civil War. Now, this was a hard one to recommend. There's a lot of flaws with this game. It sits at mostly positive and mixed on recent reviews. And there's a reason for that. It's because there are some problems with the AI, the buggy movement of troops. But for me, this is the best game about the American Civil War from beginning to end. Even though some min-maxers, they finished the war in like 1 year, I love to roleplay as a 19th century commander in this game with the mod Whiskey and Lemons. And that's sort of the best experience you can get out of this. And what is this game? Well, you can play as the Confederacy, you can play as the Union, and you basically control the country in terms of the economics with, sliders and tariffs and all that, building buildings if you want, which is not a good idea, but still. You also control your own armies. You can customize these. And the devs of this game are so autistic, man. They go down to the minute little historical details, even to the letters. So you receive letters from your commanders telling them, like, they tell you their situation, they tell you the amount of guns they have in their army, how much infantry they have, and it's just funny because They even go down to the salutations, the letters, like saying, "I am, sir, your most obedient of servants." Like, who does that in a game where you actually, have historical letters in the game that say, I am, sir, your most obedient of servants. Like, that is so attention to detail. You also have an economy, and as is pretty obvious, is like a campaign map where you customize your troops with historical commanders of your choice, like Lee or Grant or Sherman. For instance, you may want to give your crack troops imported Prussian breech loaders, which is really nice. I love the customizations of your units. You're going to have thousands of men, but still, it's a nice feature. And my most favorite feature of this game, even with all the bugs and all the little issues that people bring up, is the career mode. The career mode basically solves a lot of problems. You don't have to deal with the campaign map. You don't have to worry about winning the war in 1 year or something like that, as some people do. You could just play as brigade commander in the Confederates or the Union armies, where you slowly gain prestige to command larger and larger forces. And you can go rogue, guys. You can disregard orders from high command and pillage all you want. You can run around the west and just as a cavalry detachment and just go raiding. It's an open sandbox, and I love that. Okay, and it's the entire map, guys, the entirety of America. And yeah, you Yanks, bro, you love it. You love this game. Honestly, even with the AI issues where the AI is kind of dumb, you could fix that by playing the Whiskey and Lemons DLC. But even then, I would say that has bugs as well, and the performance is quite but I can't think of another game that does the American Civil War that amount of justice. Because it just simulates everything pretty well in terms of the weapons, the training level, the morale, the supply. Everything is modeled in this game, guys. I hesitate to find any unrealistic aspect except the AI and some certain tiny things. Even the cavalry, they model cavalry excellently. Cavalry isn't like the Napoleonic Wars where you have to charge down the forces, right, with heavy cavalry. You actually have to use them historically, pursuing actions and dismounting to shoot with your troops, right? It's just a really it's the best historical depiction of Victorian era warfare, at least in the American Civil War. And I can't find anything else similar to it, so that's why it's on my list. And I always come back to it when I want that 19th century commander experience. Next, which is a pretty interesting one that I'm sure that not many people know of, and this is Patrician 3. Now, this is a strategy game, and I love this game because it's a nice chill game in between these serious war games with politics and all that. And when I have a hard day or a hard thing, I always boot up this game where you play as a Renaissance merchant in the Hansa. So that was a trading organization in the 1300s and 1400s. And what you do in this game is you trade, you build warehouses, you play the supply and demand. You slowly build a trading network of ships and production buildings to feed the Hansa. And in turn, you will grow your influence to be a part of politics and even become like the top man, the older man. You can even cuck your rivals and become a pirate if you want and raid your competitors to bring demand up for your own trading. Again, as I said before, it's very chill. I always play this game as a cleanser between my other games when I don't want to think about things too much. Of course, it's a very complex game, but still, it's just very chill. I play classical music while I'm playing this game, and I recommend it. It's very cheap to get. You only need to have like one mod to fix the resolution problems. And there's very little games that cover like seaborne trade between towns. There are a couple like Port Royale, but I think Patrician 3 is the best one. And this game is for patricians. But yeah, my dream game would be Patrician 3 mixed with Crusader Kings, where you lead a sort of merchant family or something like that. Obviously, we're going to get a DLC for Crusader Kings 3 probably that's going to cover that. But yeah, Patrician 3, an excellent trading game. And yes, it's a strategy game. You have a strategy. You have to corner the market. There's strategy in that. So great game. A very good chill game. And next, Victoria 2. Now, I know this is probably not surprising. Okay, I feel like this should be in everyone's sort of top 5. And I'm not going to labor the point too much because I've already critiqued Victoria 3 like multiple times over. I've beaten this dead horse multiple times over, so I won't labor the point. But yeah, I love Victoria 2 because it's the perfect blend of the Paradox game: conquest, colonial expansion, and economics. So it brings in everything from every Paradox game except the character elements. I love the system of the world market. Even though Victoria 3 has added it, it took them years to add a world market. And the world market, even though it's a bit abstract, it represents the increasing globalization of the world. Because the 19th century, it oversaw a change in economics, a change essentially in the world. Everything changed in that period. And I think the world market showcases the big economic forces, also how great powers they have sort of leverage over the economics. A world market shows that. So I love that little mechanic there. The mods are also excellent. Even though this game requires like a bit of modding to fix the certain issues of the game, it's still a great thing. They add slaves, they add more pops to make the economics more complex and less broken. Because there is an incentive to like build liquor factories a lot because it's a great good, right? But even then, like, liquor is an essential good for everybody, so it makes sense that it would be a good building. So I don't know why people complain about liquor factories being good. So, but yeah, it doesn't really bother me. But still, instead of Victoria 3, where you're micromanaging every economic detail, in Victoria 2, you are the hand of commerce, or the invisible hand. So instead of, again, this is why I hate Victoria 3, is that you're micromanaging every production method or little trade route. But in Victoria 2, it's all automated because you actually don't have control, like omnipresent control of the economy. You're basically steering it as like a 19th century ruler. Okay, there's different ideologies, and I love the spheres of influence mechanic because it showcases soft great power politics in the 19th century. So instead of conquest, which is a bit more expensive, you can totally blob in this game, but still, when nations are part of your sphere of influence, they sort of join your market, or you get more control of their goods, essentially, in basic terms. And I love the politics system because it models to the 19th century ruler, as I said before, where you're slowly handing out reform, not too much, but not too little. Because if you put too many reforms out, the expenses, they get out of control, especially with pensions. If you have like a huge population, those pensions are going to cost way more. But you make those people happy. So it's sort of a measured approach where you hand out reforms slowly, and measured. You don't just pass every law that's good for you, right? Unlike Victoria 3, where you're trying to find these min-maxing laws. But in Victoria 2, you can't really afford to pass every reform because it just makes things dicey in terms of the pops getting out of control with their ideas of revolution, right? Because again, the revolutions in this game are very, very intense, I'll say that. And the warfare, while it's micro-intensive, which is the biggest complaint about it, micro-intensive, they forget that there's a pause button. Oh my god, guys. So it does show the progression of 19th century warfare. You go from Napoleonic wars to relying on pitched battles to win, to a more defensive style of warfare as your tech tree sort of advances. So as you get machine guns, as you get techs that reduce the combat width, and it just turns into a World War I scenario where there's front lines. Again, very micro-intensive, but very reflective of the period. And the UI is actually better than Victoria 3, which is hilarious. People complain about the UI in Victoria 2, but it's actually very clear when you get used to it. You have this top bar, and everything shows you, most of the important details are on that top bar. And meanwhile, in Victoria 3, you have to dig through multiple menus sometimes. So again, I still recommend Victoria 2 to this day, even though it's a bit dated, even though Victoria 3 has certain mechanics that make it perhaps a tiny bit better. But still, there's a lot of mods with Victoria 2. There's lots of mods that add the Cold War to it, which is kind of nice. So yeah, that's why I recommend Victoria 2 as my second most favorite game, because I always return to it when I want a 19th century experience. And next we have Mount & Blade Warband. I think this comes to no surprise if you look at the channel name of my channel and the games I covered in the early beginnings of this channel. I think Mount and Blade Wargame is one of the best games in the world, and I don't say that lightly. Okay? Even though it's not really a historical game, it's a fantasy game based on medieval Europe. There are a lot of mods that use Mount and Blade Warband as a platform for historical periods. And I'll just list out a few you can play as. You can play in the medieval period. You can play in pike and shot. You can play in the Napoleonic period. You can play in the Victorian era. There's multiple mods which add different styles of warfare, different mechanics to accommodate their historical periods that they're showcasing. You know, there's a mod for everybody in Warband, and that's what I love about this game, is that you get so much value out of this game. Hundreds of hours of value, because the mods are just insane for this game. Even sci-fi mods and fantasy mods. As I said before, they introduce new mechanics or troop lines to showcase the different styles of warfare. And when you get tired of historical periods, as I said before, you can move on to fantasy or even sci-fi with Star Wars. The possibilities are endless. The base gameplay, again, people don't say this, but the base gameplay is amazing. That's why Mount and Blade Warband is good, even without mods, is you're essentially role-playing as a character in this decentralized world where you're just one person in the world. Again, it's a strategy RPG. There's going to be characters and control of factions and armies. And this is what makes Mount and Blade unique, is that you don't actually have omnipresent control over your faction. And you know, your commanders or other characters, they have their own ideas of how to operate. You don't have full control of your army. Okay, some will go on their own campaigns, while others will sit at home and feast. It depends on the mod, but you know, it has a very decentralized command and control system where you can tell specific characters or lords to do what you want, and they could disagree with you. They could go, hey, I don't want to listen to you. I don't want to leave my castle. Like, you know, I don't want to stop feasting and help you because of their personality, right? You may have lords raid you specifically because you're an upstart. You know, it's just very dynamic. The game's very dynamic and realistic for the medieval period, even though it's a fantasy game. It's the only game that sort of simulates sort of feudal politics on the local level, okay, with the villages, the lords having their own troops and retinues. And of course, Bannerlord is getting there. I'm not saying Bannerlord's a bad game by not putting it here, but Warband still has that massive volume of complete historical mods for you to enjoy. As I said before, the base game is serviceable even for a medieval experience. You literally go from a peasant to a nobility to even king. And you can even attain a waifu. Oh my god, guys. Oh my god. And even though I like Bannerlord for the dynastic element more, like, you know, Bannerlord actually has simulated nobility families, like they actually have kids and stuff like that. In Warband, everyone's like, you know, has eternal life. Warband still is better in that regard in terms of the medieval politics, or even then you can bring the medieval politics to 19th century politics if you want. It depends on the mod. But again, there's barely any games like Mount and Blade Warband with keyword all the mechanics. There are some that take inspiration from Mount and Blade, but none of them really take all the mechanics, like the factions, the decentralized command and control system, the character creation, you know, where you're playing as one person in this dynamic world. There's nothing really like it still, except, you know, its successor Bannerlord, which is lacking a little bit of stuff, lacking that sort of roleplay. There's roleplay mechanics that were in Warband. I feel like Warband is better for roleplaying, and Bannerlord's more better for gameplay. Okay, like the moment-to-moment gameplay. And I think it's quite challenging to create a sandbox that is Mount and Blade Warband, because, you know, you have to take risks as developers, and people don't want to take risks. They want to create a sandbox, and that's fine. But again, I just can't think of a game that beats Mount and Blade Warband in terms of its dynamic sandbox. A dynamic sandbox that can be converted into a historical experience. Any historical experience you want. Any historical experience. You can also have medieval Japan if you want. There's so many things you can play in this game. And again, guys, I just cannot recommend this game enough. I have almost 1k hours in it. And there's also multiplayer mods. So if you get tired of single player, you can play like the Napoleonic Wars with a regiment, and you fight with the regiment or your buddies, which is kind of neat. But yeah, guys, those are my top 5 historical strategy games of all time. I know this list might anger some people. There might be other games out there that they think are better, but that's why I put my in the title. So yeah, tell me your guys' thoughts. Do you think I'm wrong in saying that these are good historical games? I think they are. I think Crusader Kings 3, it's a toss-up, okay? Is CK3 better than CK2? Tell me in the comments, guys. I'd love to hear it. But yeah, guys, I'll see you guys later. Bye. G'day, Warbanders, and thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate it. If you want to support me, please like and subscribe and tell me your thoughts about the video. It pushes my video more into the algorithm, which is what I want, and also how you can help me the most. But if you're more inclined, you can support me through my Buy Me a Coffee link in my channel description, or by signing up for a YouTube membership where I give out custom emojis and early access to videos I'm making. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.